Digital transformation requires speed, scale, and integration. So the solution that I'm going to talk about today is essentially a data caching solution. We call it the data porter. This solution is developed using Neural Technologies' Optimus platform. We incorporated the Aerospike NoSQL Edge database. So in order to understand the needs to deploy a data porter solution, first, let us look at some of the challenges faced by enterprises. Number one, many sources. There are many sources of data. The vast amount of data, they are stored disparately and replicated across multiple IT systems. And this makes it very difficult for the front-end application to access data. Number two, many APIs. The only way for front-end application to access data from the back is through calling APIs. So many APIs have been implemented over the years. Many API are non-standard. Many API are proprietary. Some are legacy. So sometimes you have to make multiple API queries across multiple systems just to get the data that you want. So these add a lot of complexity to the front-end application. And number three, data availability. Very often these days, data are needed in real time to support customers. However, your backend IT system may not be available all the time. Sometimes due to congestion because of under-dimensioning, sometimes too many people trying to request for the same data. Sometimes the backend is down due to maintenance window. This will affect your service level at the front line. And number four, increasing costs. So this is the most common challenge faced by our customers. Data is growing, and the rapid data queries cause your source IT system that needs to be expanded over time. What are the key requirements in digital transformation? Number one, you need a good unified data point. A single point of contact where to serve all your data access, to hide all the complexity of the backend from the front end. Number two, API layer. An API layer that is easy to use, easy to call. You can use standard data format like JSON, non-proprietary protocol to make those API calls. And number three, intelligence. Having the ability to customize business logics using rules and thresholds. Having the ability to add analytics to help businesses make predictions and recommendations. And lastly, performance and security. Enhance the performance by reducing the number of queries to the source IT system. Improve security by introducing authorization, authentication control of data set. I'm going to show you a customer case study. This is one of our customers in Malaysia. They are a mobile operator with about 6 million subscribers. So they face a lot of the challenges that I just mentioned a while ago. Their IT infrastructure, they have enterprise service bus right in the middle, dividing the northbound and the southbound. Every time when the enterprise service bus is down, there's no way for the front-end application to access any of the data, therefore affect your service level. Number two, because every query has to go through the enterprise service bus. So over the years, they kept expanding the enterprise service bus, buying more hardware, buying more software licenses. So we introduced the data porter this year. As you can see, without the data porter, which is a NoSQL database from Aerospike, they were doing about 3.5 million queries a day. So after we added the data porter, You can see that during the tuning period, the number of queries to the back is already decreasing. And when the system is fully tuned and stabilized, the number of queries drop down from 3.5 million to about 500,000. This represents 80% reduction of the hits to the source system. So you can imagine if you translate the 80% reduction into software licenses, that's quite a fair bit of savings. Again, the same case study with the mobile operator in Malaysia. These are some of the parameters that we are caching in our data portal. MSISDN, which the technical term for mobile number, that's being used as a key. And we are caching parameters like subscriber group, whether you are prepaid or a postpaid customer, language ID. In Malaysia, you have Chinese, you have English, you have Bahasa Malaysia. Other parameters like subscription plan, contract ID, subscriber status. So as you can see, these parameters, these are the frequently queried parameters, but very infrequently changed. So any parameters with these kind of characteristics, they are the ideal candidate to be cached in the data portal. This is the high-level architecture of the data portal. As you can see, the data portal is sitting right in the middle of the IT infrastructure, dividing the whole IT infrastructure into the northbound and the southbound. So the data portal is retrieving data from the southbound IT system, from the southbound source system, and when they get the data, the system will store the information in the edge database. Now the northbound application, all they have to do is to make simple standard API query through the data portal. They no longer have to make all the complex API query to the backend IT system. This data portal, you could deploy it from a very small system, centralized, standalone, and then you slowly scale it up to a large-scale system in multiple locations in distributed mode. Of course, we provide administrative UI so that administrator can go in and add parameters, remove parameters, and change the settings of the parameters. This is the key functional blocks of the data portal. Functions like data handler, where we can incorporate business logics into the query. Of course, the Aerospike database sitting right there. We have the security and the admin module. We have an intelligent data enhancer. So if you need to change the format of the data, you could use this function to perform some reformatting. We have queuing mechanism to queue the queries, and we have logging function. So in addition to just caching data, this platform could also publish data. It could be a producer of data into an external data pipeline. For example, Kafka. So you allow the external consumer to use the data for further transformation, further processing, or analytics. So in summary, the data portal really acts as a layer to address all the needs in IT transformation. It is an efficient data management platform. It has easy access to data sources. It provides data governance. And most importantly, it is a downstream logical transformation and adaptation for agile implementation. So in short, the data portal is the point of truth to manage your customer experience. Some of the essential capabilities in the platform: the real-time edge database, which is Aerospike, is able to handle high volume and performance as per dimension. It is flexible. You can add, edit, remove parameters, key values. It is agnostic to data types. It supports almost any form of data types. And it fully leverages the Aerospike key value store with features like the hybrid storage engine support using in-memory and flash. And it supports high availability and cluster setup. In terms of the edge database update synchronization mechanism, it is able to refresh, update parameter values at any point based on different sources independently. The platform, you're able to configure it into a primary, secondary source retrieval mode, i.e., you could configure the platform so in case your primary source is not available, the platform will automatically go to a secondary source to retrieve the data. And it has also a retention period whereby you can set an expiry period. So anything within the expiry time frame, the data will be fetched from the data portal. After the expiry time frame, the data will be deleted. So any subsequent query into the data portal will then force the data portal to retrieve the data from the source system. And lastly, security, as I mentioned earlier on, you can have API to implement authorization control and authentication control. And you can set up different users to access different set of parameters and values. For a data portal, it is important that you need to support a wide variety of interfaces and APIs. So in regards to the query API from the northbound, it supports most of the standard industry protocol, HTTP, which is very common, data format like JSON, which is in trend today, but we also support SOAP XML. It supports both single API query and a batch query. And it has the option to bypass the cache retrieval mode. Interfaces in accordance to the source system. And as I said earlier on, it can be configured using the primary, secondary source mode. And lastly, we provide a comprehensive suite of administrative API so you could set up the system to manage the key value identifier, the parameters, and you can configure the system to force a refresh or synchronization. So with this, I'm going to pass on the mic to Bill to continue the presentation.
Thanks, Liang. So Liang did introduce himself, but I'm going to introduce him. He's the Chief Revenue Officer of one of our important partners in the region, Neural Networks. So they have operations here in Singapore and across Asia, as well as in Europe. So if anybody comes from far and wide, they're a good partner to know. So I'm going to wrap up just telling you a little bit about Aerospike. He mentioned us in the architecture he just described to you. And when you think about digital transformation in a broad sense, the types of things that Liang just walked you through, there's really four things that we've found throughout our customer experience that are really, really important to think through. Okay, in terms of what you're trying to architect into those types of solutions. Number one, probably the most important that a lot of people don't think about, which is uptime, durability, reliability. If you think about the use cases Liang talked about, these are things that can't go down. You think about mobile operators and the number of queries and transactions and the mobile, we all carry mobile devices and we're either trying to text message, we're trying to access an enterprise application, very simple things. We take for granted that it's always there, it's always available, it's always on. So when you think about the underlying data architecture for those types of applications, you have to think about uptime. It just simply has to work. The other thing you have to think about is performance, and not just it has to be fast, because we're all there. We expect things to be immediate. We expect to get an immediate response from all of our applications, right? But as that demand on your infrastructure grows, and I'll give you an example, PayPal, one of our largest customers around the world, if you think about the number of transactions that go through that network every single minute of every day, It has to scale, and it has to continue to scale, and it has to continue to scale, and the performance cannot be impacted regardless of the amount of workload on their underlying data architecture. It just has to scale, continuously scale, and you can't worry about that as a data architect or a DevOps person. You just have to say it's going to scale and it's going to work regardless of how much that scales up or scales out. Gets to another point. As you try to think through how these applications scale, as you grow your user's environment, you can't keep throwing hardware at the problem. You can't keep throwing more and more servers at it. It becomes too costly and it becomes too complex to maintain. So one of the things about our database, and I'll explain it in a minute, the way we architect it was you don't have to continue to throw servers at it to continue to scale. It will continue to scale at a very, very efficient number of servers, which is really important, okay? And lastly, I would invite you to think about what database vendor is out there powering some of the most high-scale, innovative, real-time applications in the world, okay? Because a lot of those companies have come about in the last decade. They have suffered through all of the trial and errors of how do you build that architecture that really is going to work. Rather than going through trial and error, look at what the people are doing that have actually done it successfully today. So it comes to about how do we do it? What's unique about Aerospike? We're really a next generation NoSQL database. We are not like the old NoSQL databases that you hear about. We truly are unique. It comes down to our architecture. We call it a hybrid memory architecture. Simply stated, we uniquely take advantage of memory as well as SSDs or flash. We architected it from that way, from the ground up, from the hardware layer all the way up through the stack, so that we have the speed of an in-memory database with all the persistence that you get with flash. Nobody does that but us. So if you think about how you can have a high-speed database that's reliable, you have to think about how you uniquely take care of both of those types of storage, okay? We also are massively threaded and massively parallel. That's really important if you want to be able to scale up and scale out and not have to worry about having to throw more and more servers at it. So we typically come in and replace a legacy NoSQL where the scale got to the point where they're throwing so many servers at it that the cost has gotten out of control and the complexity and the maintenance is unsustainable. So you have to think about how the database is actually architected from how it's threaded. And lastly, self-healing clusters. If you understand NoSQL, we're all distributed databases, but clusters can fail. It's just a fact of life. What happens when a cluster fails? By the way, these could be distributed around the world. What happens? We have a unique smart client which understands that if a cluster goes down, another cluster automatically takes over, and your application might have a very minor hit and then it comes back up. That is unique to us. That's how we can do what we do, unique to anybody else in our industry. And lastly, these are just a few of our customers. We have others in the region. Some of you might have heard DBS Bank talk yesterday. They walked through what they're building on top of our database. This is the beginning of a journey. They're widely regarded in the region as one of the most successful digital banks in there and across the world. And they're building their entire data infrastructure now based upon Aerospike. It's going to have multiple use cases, but we're going to be the foundation for that. Baidu in China, probably you've all heard of Baidu. They're using us for some really interesting user identity and security applications, because if you think about the number of people that are storing data within Baidu, Baidu wants to make sure that that information is secure, our private information is secure, it can't be hacked, and so they're doing that all on top of Aerospike. So I'll leave you with one final slide. If you want to learn more about what we do, we have a booth right down there. I invite you, if you're interested to learn more, then I can talk to you about today. We can talk to you about some of our customers, talk to you more about our product. But thank you very much for coming today, and I hope you enjoy the show.